in any given population of bulls, 25% of bulls are subfertile. So a BBSC should pick up most of these. So again, just kind of highlighting the importance of carrying out BBSE in good time, well before the breeding season.
Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan, and on this week's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Colin Byrne, researcher in Teagasc Grange, to discuss key aspects of our synchronisation regime for a suckler beef herd. Current usage of AI is low in Irish suckler herds, with only 1 out of every 5 calves born in beef herds being bred from AI. Colin, you're very welcome. Breeding will start on many farms in the coming weeks. What are the benefits to AI?
So yeah, look, I suppose starting off, you mentioned one already in terms of benefits of AI, and that's the genetic improvement. So by using AI, farmers are going to have, I suppose, a better selection or a broader selection of bulls, both terminal and replacement. So obviously, if the farmer is breeding his own replacements then as well, it can remove the need for a second bull. So rather than having to have a terminal and a replacement bull on the farm, they'd only need to have the terminal and they could breed the replacements from AI. And even on that then, I suppose it could almost completely remove the need to have a bull altogether if a farmer eventually switched to 100% AI, which would really, I suppose, help them maximise their genetic gain on their farm.
And given the new recent SCEP scheme, Colin, what should a farmer's policy be for producing quality female replacements?
Obviously, in the SCEP scheme, there's a requirement this year, say, to have 50% of the reference number being 4 or 5 star heifers on the 31st of October. And then that increases up to 75% on the 31st of October in 2027. So a farmer needs to assess their current situation or their current herd rating. And if I suppose their overall star ratings are low, obviously they're not going to have time to breed enough replacements that they need to purchase in. But then I suppose they also need to look forward, and if they are breeding the replacements, in terms of how they're going to achieve it. So that'll be, if you have a cow that could be average, so in around 3 stars, she's probably going to need at least a 5 star bull to bring her daughters up to 4 star. I suppose the other thing then, look, with any good breeding policy, farmers need to look within the indexes. So not just looking at the total overall Eurostar value, looking at balance and traits. So I suppose the 3 main traits that we normally focus on for ensuring that they're balanced as a minimum are carcass weight, milk, and daughter calving interval. And I suppose this ensures that the farmer is going to have the best chance of having a good productive cow that can feed a calf, she's fertile, and then that obviously the calf she can produce is also suitable as a beef animal later in life.
And what kind of targets within those 3 categories, Colin, should farmers be focused on?
This is possibly going to depend a little bit on where they are. So if you already have animals that are reasonably high for the specific traits, you can, I suppose, don't have to add an awful lot to it. But things, and again, it's going to some degree depend on breed. But for carcass weight, I suppose we don't want to go too high. So something in around 20 plus 20 kg is probably going to be okay. Milk, I would say anywhere 8 to 10 above, and then calving interval. I suppose with calving interval, you probably can't go too negative really. So as minus a figure as possible. So this is essentially shortening the calving interval of these animals.
And for farmers that might be considering synchronising beef heifers or cows, what key points should they be aware of?
The key points in this is that synchronisation, I suppose, is something that's starting to increase in popularity, and there's a good few more questions been asked about it. So things, I suppose, for somebody that might be on the fence and unsure about what they need to do or what the benefits are going to be. So one thing, it's going to reduce the labour and make artificial insemination more accessible. So you can use either a fixed time AI protocol or you can use a protocol where you're essentially just ensuring all these cows are going to come into heat in a shorter period. So this can be planned for dates where labour is going to be more available. it's going to be fairly useful if land is fragmented. So if a farmer has fragmented land and it's just not as straightforward to go heat checking as often as is needed, synchronization is definitely definitely a possibility there. And then I suppose also reducing your calving spread. So we'd normally recommend that about 80% of cows and heifers should be calving in the first 6 weeks of the calving season. But if there are some animals that have kind of starting to slip well outside that, but otherwise seem in good health, in good condition, and fertile, synchronizing them can be a way, I suppose, of bringing them back into the fold into a more compact calving pattern.
So I suppose looking at the first group of stock, in a lot of cases you mentioned there the fragmented farms, on some cases replacement heifers maybe going to an out farm. What would be the synchronisation regime for beef heifers that maybe farmers are planning to calve down at 24 months?
There's two protocols that are available for use on heifers. One is a prostaglandin-based protocol. This just involves 2 injections of prostaglandin and some heat checking. So normally we'd heat check for the first 5 to 6 days and inseminate heifers using the AM/PM rule. You'd expect about 30% of the heifers should have come into heat naturally at this stage. If it's any less than this, you probably need to just have a look and make sure there's no other underlying issues that might not be well enough grown. Then the heifers that haven't been detected in heat are injected with prostaglandin, and heat detection continues, and AI to heat detection using AM/PM as before. So then 11 days after the first prostaglandin injection, we give another prostaglandin injection, and this will give another prostaglandin injection and then heat detect and inseminate for about 5 to 6 days again after this. So you'd normally see, I suppose, most heifers respond in about 48 hours after these injections. And then after your second injection, you should expect to have inseminated at least 80% of the heifers. One thing about this protocol is that the heifers have to be already cycling for this protocol to work successfully. So then I suppose there is another progesterone-based protocol available that farmers can use. So this protocol is where it can be used fixed time or AI to heat detection as well. So on the first day, a cedar is inserted and the animal is injected with GnRH. And then 5 days later, the heifer is injected with prostaglandin. And then 24 hours after that, the cedar is taken out and the heifer is injected with prostaglandin. And then 3 days later, the heifer is injected with GnRH and AI. So this is your fixed time AI protocol. So all in all, you're looking at 9 to 10 days for that protocol. Or then alternatively, after you take your cedar out, you can heat detect an AI as normal to that. So I suppose for heifers, there are 2 protocols that are widely used. There are others, but we've seen, I suppose, generally reasonably good success with these. Just, I suppose, a couple of points on them. And it's always the same whether you're using synchronization or anything, is weight for age in heifers that you want to calve at 24 months of age. So we'd be talking kind of minimum 380 to 420, particularly for later maturing breeds. They should be cycling before any of these protocols are applied. And for the 2 shots of prostaglandin, one that I talked about earlier, they absolutely have to be cycling or that won't work. And then in general, with these heifers where they're going in calf at 14 to 15 months of age, using an easy calf and bull is highly recommended to ensure that there's no high incidence of dystocia at calving time.
And what's the variation in the costs across the 2 different programs you mentioned, Colin?
Yeah, so look, for the two shot one, which is probably there's a little bit more involved in terms of heat detection and whatever else, but just given the 2 injections, you're talking about €8 to €10 for the whole thing. And then for your progesterone-based protocol, it's probably going to be more in the region of 28 to 30 euros. One other thing I suppose that I really should have pointed out at the beginning there is that all these are prescription-only medicines. So your prostaglandin, your Cedar, and your GnRH, you need a prescription from your vet, so you will need to consult your vet on this.
Then I suppose the other category of stock, Colin, really is the beef cow that is calved over 35 days. What would you recommend as a synchronisation regime for them?
Yeah, so look, the protocol that we used here is generally the progesterone-based protocol. So a little bit of a variation, I suppose, on what I just described above. So on the first day, you insert a Cedar and you inject it with GnRH. And then on 7 days later, you remove the Cedar and you inject with prostaglandin and ECG or equine chorionic gonadotrophin. So I suppose a pregnant marum serum gonadotrophin. And then 72 hours after that, inject with GnRH and AI. So that's your fixed time AI protocol. And then for your inseminations to heat, you can inseminate after to heat detected after you remove the Cedar from that animal. Again, I suppose just on the cost, that's going to be similar enough to the cost above in around your 28 to 30 euro region.
I suppose really the synchronisation programme is probably coming into effect, Colin, in relation to sex semen, which has been becoming much more widely available for beef sires in the past number of years. What would the success rate be for sex semen versus normal AI?
In general, normally what we see is that your conception rate will be about 85% of what your conception rate would be if you were using conventional semen. Okay, so just for an example, if you're achieving a conception rate of 90% over your whole breeding season, you'd expect this to fall to about 77% if you were using sexed semen.
I suppose a lot of farmers might be only considering implementing a synchronisation programme for the first time. How could the success of the programme be improved for farmers that are only trying it this year?
Look, some of these, I suppose we've mentioned already. One thing that I think you'd recommend, because as I said, there is a cost per animal involved, is perhaps a pre-breeding scan. So you don't want to, I suppose, spend this money on a cow that's dirty, because synchronization is not going to remove any of the issues around that. So a pre-breeding scan and sorting out or washing out any animals that require it. And then I suppose in terms of body condition score, so particularly on your cows, we've seen studies where if cows are less than 2.5 in terms of body condition score, their response to synchronization is normally poor. You mentioned it already there, Catherine, cows should be at least 35 days calved. And then I suppose the other thing is if a farmer's not using the fixed time AI protocol, if they're inseminating to heat detection, their heat detection skills do need to be up to scratch. Okay, so something like using a teaser, wearing a chin ball as a vasectomized bull, tail paint, and then I suppose there's a range of digital options available as well that farmers can use to, I suppose, increase the accuracy of their heat detection and make sure that they haven't missed any cows.
That's great, Colin. And I suppose as we start the breeding season for farmers that are using a stock bull, what would be the key pre-breeding fertility checks that you'd recommend?
First and foremost, I think I'd always recommend a BBSC or a bull breeding soundness evaluation. So essentially what this is going to do is it's going to check the semen quantity and quality of the bull. And it'll also, I suppose, look at general health and limbs of the animal. So look, at the minute, this should have been probably done about 6 to 8 weeks prior to when you start breeding, so that you can take action. So if an animal needs a treatment, you can give it and they're well recovered. Or in some cases, you might actually need to replace the animal. At a very minimum, if you can't carry out that, you need, I suppose, just a quick assessment that a farmer can carry out on the bull. I suppose that the animal is in good body condition score, so 3 to 3.5, but also bearing in mind the animal needs to be fit and not fat. I suppose you don't want them to have any lameness at the minute, and also I suppose looking back that they shouldn't have been lame for the last while either, because I suppose any increase in infection or temperature is going to affect semen quality. And I suppose that can be an issue. Also, I suppose in terms of any deformities on the testes, so I suppose checking the scrotum of the animal that there's no lumps or any major differences in sizes between the two testes. And then I suppose also during the breeding season, so even as the breeding season is ongoing, you can also, I suppose, record your heat or check your heats and record them, and then just keep an eye out for a high level of repeats. So this would indicate that there may be an issue with a bull. I suppose just to point out, like that, to farmers and anybody that has a stock bull, that in general, in any given population of bulls, 25% of bulls are subfertile. So a BBSC should pick up most of these. So again, just kind of highlighting the importance of carrying out a BBSE in good time, well before the breeding season, to remove any of these issues. Because if you have a subfertile bull, I suppose the biggest issue is this bull will still get some cows and calf, but you will have a high level of repeats. And what it'll do is it'll increase your calving spread and increase your calving spread.
That's great, Colin. Thanks very much. Some great tips and advice.
Thanks, Catherine.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to Colin for joining me on the show. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan, and thanks for listening.